Welcome to Linda's Corner. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about relationships and intimacy. I'm delighted to welcome special guest, Dr. April Brown. Dr. April is a licensed mental health Christian counselor, intimacy expert, co-host of the podcast Bringing Intimacy Back, and the author of Improving Intimacy, which is available on Amazon. You can reach Dr. April at her website, draprilbrown.com, and I'll include a link in the description. Welcome, Dr. April. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, Linda. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
I am looking forward to this conversation because
Yes.
I'm expecting something different than most people think of when they hear the word intimacy. Because
Right.
we're not just talking about sex. You help people using intimacy in all different kinds of relationships, whether it's a romantic relationship or a family relationship or a platonic relationship. And so I thought, I think I need a new definition of intimacy. So will you please explain to me what you mean when you use the word intimacy?
So what I mean about when I would use the word intimacy is intimacy. It is a connection. It is connection with yourself, which is, you cannot divorce yourself. You're going to be with yourself for the rest of your life. So it's so important. Also, the connection with your inner spirit or higher power or whatever people call it. I call it inner spirit and higher power because that's really important. And that connection with others. So it's that deep connection. And when your body, mind, spirit, and soul is all connected, and that you are completely in the present moment. That's when true intimacy can happen.
And that means so many different things. I mean, if we could really be in harmony and in tune with ourselves, that would affect every other relationship that we have, right?
Right.
And then, but it's hard. I'm thinking it's so, even when you're in a relationship, whether it's a romantic partner, whether it's your family members, whether it's something, we can be in a group of people and feel totally and completely alone. Like we are not connected to any of the other people that are around. And I've talked to my son, he's in his 20s, and he said,
Right.
when I'm looking for someone, I want to feel like I'm not alone. I want to feel like we are, and I guess the word would be connected, where it's, you're not just talking and trying to be polite, but you actually feel a connection.
Right. And that's what so many of us are struggling with,
Right.
especially in these past few years where we've been isolated.
Very much.
Very much. Yes. So we are wanting to get back out there and connect. And sometimes you're right. You can be in a room or you can even be with your partner and you feel totally disconnected. Whether it is because of a situation or sometimes it's because of ourselves, because our mind goes somewhere else. We get anxious, we get fearful, we get depressed, and we leave our body.
We leave our body.
Disconnected.
Wow. So by leave our body, that means like physically I'm here, but my mind is over there doing something completely different. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes. Because when you're, I'm a mental health counselor, okay? So when you're anxious, many times you're worried so much about the future. You know what I'm saying? What if this happens? What if this happens? Or I can't wait to get to there. And we're not in the present moment. Or if there's been trauma, we're in the past. And then same thing with depression. Many times we're in the past. Or we're up in our heads saying things to ourselves that we shouldn't be. And we've left our body. We miss the present moment. And the present moment is the only thing that we can control. And psychologically, spiritually, medically. I mean, all the sciences want us to be in the present moment.
Wow.
You know?
I've never thought of it that way. All of the sciences want us in the present moment. So is that one of the keys to intimacy, to feeling that connection, is to be in the present moment?
Present moment, yes, yeah. And so even when we talk about sexual connection with your partner, is actually being there with your partner, seeing your partner for who they are at that moment. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Not thinking about what they did last night or 2 years ago or
worrying about what you've got going on tomorrow. Let's just be here right now at this moment.
Right.
Okay. That is very important. So we're talking about intimacy. Are there different types of intimacy so that we can, keep things
Yes.
a little clear? Because, that word typically we use for one type of intimacy.
Right.
And so as we're using this word, I think it would help get some clarification. Say, okay, this is what I mean when I'm in this relationship. And this is what I mean in this relationship.
There's different types of intimacy.
Yes, please.
Of course, there is the self-intimacy, which is being connected with yourself fully. There is the spiritual intimacy, being connected with your higher power. But there's also all these different forms of intimacy. Communication intimacy. Using your words to truly communicate effectively, with a gift of how you communicate to your partner, your needs and your wants, and your partner communicates back. And then meeting each other emotionally, that emotional connection of feeling safe, secure, love. Then there's all these other forms of intimacies, of activities intimacy. You guys going and doing, playing in the pool together, sharing activity. Or service intimacy. You and your partner or you and your teenager going and giving back. Doing a soup kitchen together. Doing a variety of different things. Aesthetic intimacy. Yeah, you and your friend or your partner or your mom, even just going to watch the beautiful we have in here in Florida, beaches or mountains, and sharing that experience. So it's like two people sharing an activity together, whether it's a creative intimacy, doing paints and drama. So there's all these different forms of how you can be intimately together.
Wow, that's just such a different version of what that means. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around, okay, this is what we're talking about. My word, I guess that my go-to word would be feeling in the present moment, feeling connected. And
Yes.
in my mind, I'm thinking of what a common scenario is where you have two people maybe in the same room, but they're both on their electronic devices, their phone or their laptop or their whatever. And they're physically in the same room, but completely and totally doing different things. And so the idea, it seems like, is to create this actual connection where we are in the present and we are caring about the other person who is with us at that moment. And we're not even just talking about people that are with us. You're talking about that connection with nature. When you're walking along a beautiful beach and you're feeling that, the sand under your feet and maybe the water is kind of lapping at your toes and the sunshine is on your skin.
Exactly.
And just enjoying that moment.
Right, exactly. Because some people, how can I put it? They don't enjoy the present moment. And what you're talking about also that with intimacy is what we call mindfulness.
Oh, that's probably the word I was looking for.
Yes, yeah, that's the word you're looking for. Mindfulness means being in the present moment without judgment.
Without
being in the
judgment.
present without judgment. And I guess, a lot of people say, well, I don't judge other people, which is, true, not to judge other people, but also not to judge yourself. Yeah, which is hard because some people are doing stuff and they're like, oh my gosh, am I doing this perfectly? Am I doing this correct? Yeah. And they're saying having this dialogue in their head instead of actually enjoying the meal, tasting the meal, smooth or smelling the person or hearing the waves. When you're mindful, you're using all five senses. So for those people who struggle being in the present moment, there is that technique of using your five senses to bring you back. If your mind goes somewhere else, find 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste, and bring yourself back to the present moment.
Ooh, I liked that. Would you mind repeating it? So we've got a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, so find 5 things you can see in your atmosphere.
Okay.
Yeah, 4
First I'm
things
seeing.
you can touch.
Then I'm touching. Okay.
Yes. 3 things you can hear.
Okay, now I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Seeing.
2 things you can smell. And 1 thing you can taste.
And 1 thing I can taste. Okay.
Yes.
So if I'm at the beach, what am I tasting? Am I tasting the salty
the salt
air?
on the water? Yes. If you're with your partner, Yeah. What do? You find 5 things in their body that you can see, 4 things you can touch. Yeah. Same thing if you're with your kids. Coloring on a coloring book. Instead of you thinking, oh my gosh, you got to pay the bills, I got to, clean the refrigerator out. Bring yourself to the present moment. Enjoy that time with your kid. Because in reality, it's really about quality.
About quality
Not so much
time.
Yeah.
Right. Bringing quality back in the time. And people are so busy and running from place to place. Sometimes it's hard to create that quality time. So I like that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then that doesn't take a lot of time to bring yourself back to the present moment.
Right. Because, you were talking about your son, but people who have kids who are always so busy, doing 50 million things, and we think about multitasking. But what is that really teaching our children?
I don't know. I think people do it and have no idea what kind of effect it has on somebody else.
Right.
I think it brings a feeling of busyness, a feeling of stress, a feeling of there's not enough time in the day. I think it doesn't do happy things. I know that was a big deal for a while, and now the research is showing actually we're not as effective as we thought we were doing the multitasking, because our brain really can't be doing 2 things. It just goes back and forth like a little ping pong ball.
Right. And you're wasting more energy.
Right.
And we're more overwhelmed and exhausted than ever before.
Yeah. So it didn't give us the extra time that we hoped it would. So that's another thing we have to unlearn a little bit and say, okay, so now let's do one thing at a time and be efficient at it. And I think being present in the moment is going to help with being there.
Right.
So, and do you help people who deal with trauma? I'm thinking in my mind of someone who specifically makes sure that she's so busy because she doesn't want to be in the moment, because she doesn't want any of those traumatic memories to come back. And so it's a form of distraction. I must be distracted because I don't want to deal with it. So are there some suggestions
I see that a lot
in
the emotional intimacy aspect. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that people do not want to feel what's going on in their life. They want to block it out. You know, I just don't want to feel about, the recent death or divorce or whatever the case may be. Yeah. But it's only through truly feeling that you heal.
I agree with you. And that is true. But it takes, I think, some courage because, we don't like to do hard things if we don't think we have to. And so I think it's helpful to help remind people that it's better on the other side. Things can be better, that it's worth it,
Right. And it does also, I want to also be honest, it does take that you have to feel safe.
So what can we do to help feel more safe?
Right. If you don't feel safe and you're dealing with trauma, you're going to put it off. And in some cases you may have to, because you have to survive.
Right. That's why our brains block stuff in the first place, or, distract ourselves.
Right. Which is then why some people's like, everything is going fine. And all of a sudden I got all this of emotion because your body realizes, okay, it's safe now. Let's deal with this stuff that happened in the past. And sometimes through that, you really do need to sit down and talk with a professional, because what happens is you're working or you're doing something and you get a trigger. Mm-hmm. Trigger could be a smell, a color, anything that reminds you of your past or the trauma, because we have an unconscious mind that is humongous and we have a conscious mind that's small. And then what people do not understand is that also the body keeps score. Your body remembers everything has happened to it.
And I'm assuming that you have also read The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, which I love. I appreciate so much that he has helped make these truths become more mainstream. That it's not our psychosomatic, where people used to think, oh, that just means it's all in your head. There's nothing really wrong with you, dear. And now it's, no, actually, there is a connection between our mind and our body, our emotions, our experiences, our traumas, and it is stored inside. So it doesn't just magically go away with time. It actually
Right.
has to be dealt with. So what kinds of things do you do to help people get it out of their, not only their mind, but their body?
Right. So I teach people how to slow it down, because even in intimacy and even in sexual intimacy, sometimes someone has touched something and all of a sudden your body's frozen and your mind goes somewhere else.
Mm.
And then, of course, it's the disconnect. And that's happened over time. And then a couple just goes like this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You know, why are you rejecting me? I didn't mean to reject you. I just don't know. I just don't like it. So helping people slow it down. Let's figure out what's going on. Let's try to focus on being present. What's blocking you from being present? And through therapy, through services, teaching you different techniques is what I help people or couples work through in order to be more connected.
And I imagine these kind of issues are even more pronounced if someone has been a victim of a sexual trauma in their youth.
Right, definitely. Yes, yeah. Or any kind of trauma in the body. Yes, or in the mind. I mean, the mind is one thing also, you know, and many of us are trying to always be so perfect. You know, I'm so afraid to fail. I'm so afraid to fail. And when we're going to this communication intimacy, when we feel like we're criticized by our partner, then we try to go into this perfect mode. You know, I got to get better. I got to do this. Got to make sure I say this. I got to make sure. Then we're coaching ourselves and we're not truly present. And that also disconnects.
Wow. And these things are so big. Are there other tools besides the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to help be able to, because the tendency, when you don't feel safe, you feel like you're being criticized and weighed, measured, and judged for everything that you do. It's hard to function. Right. And we often even do that to ourselves. I am weighing and measuring and saying that I'm not good enough to myself all the time. So how do you get those voices to shut up?
So my main thing that I want anybody to remember that I say is never to say anything negative about yourself, ever. The thoughts, you got to learn how to talk to yourself like you would if you have a child or someone that you love. That's the way you have to talk to yourself. But then you say like, oh, Dr. April, I make mistakes. So I make mistakes too, all the time. But what I say to myself is I'm a work in progress. When I know better, I do better. I do not live in guilt. I do not because you're going to be with you for the rest of your life. Yeah. And people will treat you the way you treat yourself. Ooh. So if you put everybody first, and leave yourself last, and then like wondering why you feel overwhelmed, or, you know, and sometimes people say, well, it's the Christian thing to do, or it's the religious thing to do. But really, in all of the religions or all the faiths, it says love others as yourself. As you love yourself.
Yeah. So there's, you know, the great commandment, love God, love others as you love yourself. There's an implied third commandment out of those, you know, the great two. It's love yourself.
But people think they're supposed to put other people before them. You know, and I think as women, we struggle with this the most. You know what I'm saying? I got to give everything to my kids and give everything, and then you save nothing for yourself. Right. And then you kick yourself in the end of the day. And that's not good.
No, it's terrible. And you know, there's the saying that you can't pour from an empty cup. And it's used because it's true. When there's nothing to give, we don't give very well. But when we're in a good place, what we give is better.
Right. And we got to stop talking about our bodies too. We have to love our bodies. You know what I'm saying? Stop criticizing, you know, yourself and how you look, and then expect your body to work for you or even lose weight when you say all these hurtful things to it.
Right. And you know, that negative self-talk is so easy to do, and it becomes a habit and a cycle, or you can just ruminate over those things all the time. typically when we're trying to be quiet, those are the kinds of things that jump into our head. And that's actually why some people don't want to slow down. They don't want anything quiet because then they hear themselves saying all these mean things to themselves. So if you have distractions, you don't get to hear those. I talked to a friend and he put it in such a beautiful way. He said, I have chosen to be the kind of person who is kind to myself. And then whenever that rumination kind of starts and, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm garbage. Oh, no. I am the kind of person who is kind to myself. And he found that an easier way to do it than to try to go from negative self-talk to, man, I am awesome. I love my body. I'm so smart. I'm skilled. I've got all the things. I am all that. Yes. And he's like, the voices inside are going, liar, liar, liar. So to be able to say, well, actually, let's just be kind. Let's start with kindness. I know how to be kind to other people. I know what kindness looks like. Maybe I haven't been in the habit of being kind to myself, but I know what it looks like. Right. So that's, I think, a good starting place.
Right. Another technique is that this here is a container. And sometimes we're afraid to let that container out or to open that container. So if you start to have thoughts, journal it down. Even if it's the most hateful thing, journal it, tear it up, and throw it in the trash.
Ooh,
you don't have to keep it. Journal it. Do not keep it stuck in there because you start off with, I think I'm big, and then you go on this long thing. But if you were to write it out and just let your hand go, it does let it out. It does decrease it versus keeping it here, because keeping it here in the self-contained, it loops and it loops and it loops and it gets bigger, bigger, bigger. Write it out. Don't even have to read it. Tear it up. Throw it away. Write it up. Awesome. Tear it up. Throw it away.
I have done that technique a lot, and I testify that it works. It helps.
Yes.
I love that kind of visual image where this is a closed container. And if you don't let it out, it is just going to run around and around and around.
Or the worst that it comes out when we talk to other people and we verbally vomit and attack them. That's
Right. Yeah. Right. So that, I guess the frustration, the anger, the whatever, all of those things come out and then we're unkind to somebody else. So getting it out. And then I love the next step is to tear it up and throw it away. And I think that sends kind of a subconscious message back to our head saying, yes, this is what I'm feeling. I am validating that this is the way that I feel. And that's not true. Actually, those thoughts are garbage. So let's put them where they belong. They don't belong in my head. They belong in the garbage can.
In the garbage.
So let's chuck them.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. I really appreciate that because the things that we're talking about are a lot easier to say than to do. We're saying, okay, we'd like you to transform your life so that you can be calm, quiet, slow, peaceful, and be able to be in the present so that you can make those beautiful connections with people and the world around you. And in your brain, you're thinking, but I'm so busy and my head is so full and there's all these things going on. So to be able to say, okay, well, let's talk about how to go from where you are to where you'd like to be and to have those simple steps of something specific. I can do this. If my negative thoughts are driving me crazy, I can write it down and tear it up and throw away. If I'm having a hard time being present, I can do that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and pull myself back. That gives me some tools. And I think having tools is empowering. Don't you?
Right. I think so. And if you mess up, remember you're a work in progress. When you know better, you do better.
When you know better, you do
better. You're a work in progress. Yes.
Right. I am a work in progress. And I feel better about that now than I did in the past, where I thought, I'm not perfect. I like to now use an analogy of a tree, say olive trees. They're kind of crazy because they actually grow for 50 years before they start producing fruit. So if you're thinking, well, does that mean the tree was a failure for 50 years because it wasn't producing any fruit? And then all of a sudden it became a success? And I think, no, actually all of that growth for all of that time was
Exactly.
necessary in order for it to be able to produce fruit. We're not a failure and then a success. We
Right.
are that work in progress, that
Progress.
growing, beautiful thing that can do great things.
Right.
Even if we're not exactly where we would like to be right now.
And then who are we competing against?
Ooh, good question.
Right. We each have a specific or different journey, So, yeah, so stop looking at, oh my gosh, this person's done this, or, and it's hard. I mean, I know as we get older, we have sometimes a better understanding and are okay not competing. But it's sometimes really hard when you're in your 30s.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I'm thinking, teenagers and when
teenagers,
they're trying to get
yes.
started, and when we compare, I guess my go-to for comparison is social media,
Right.
where people put out their very best, and we compare our blooper reel with their highlight reel, what they're,
Yes.
this is the part of me that I want to show. And
Right.
so we think, well, I'm not that awesome, and I didn't go on that many trips, and my hair doesn't look like that, and
Right.
whatever.
Right. Did you know that if you spend, the more time you spend on social media, the more anxious and depressed you get? Did you realize that because of exactly what you just said?
I've seen a lot of research that supports that. And it's not just a correlation, it's a
Right.
causation, which
Exactly.
is not, we can say this, oh yeah, people who do this also have this. And it doesn't necessarily connect. Like, for example, you can say, oh, when ice cream sales go up, drownings go up.
Right.
And it's not because they're connected. It's because ice cream sales tend to go up in the summertime and people tend to go
Right.
swimming in the summertime. There's a correlation, but not a causation. One doesn't cause the other. But with social media time and anxiety and depression, there is actually a causation. Right, which is
Right.
sad.
Right.
So I think it's super healthy to limit the amount of time we spend on social media.
Right. Because sometimes, in reality, it takes you away from the present moment.
Oh, that's so
Awesome.
true.
Yeah. When you're at dinner and you're going through social media and you're not talking to the people at dinner, or you're laying in bed with your husband and you're going through TikTok or whatever the case may be, sometimes it takes you away. So,
Yeah.
But I'm not saying technology is bad, because technology is great.
I love it. That's how you and I are connecting today.
Yes. But it's important that you're in the present moment.
I agree. Wow, that's beautiful. Well, Dr. April, this has been a pleasure. Is there anything else you want to make sure that we cover before we close today?
I just want to talk a little bit, besides me, like you mentioned about writing books as an improving intimacy book, I also provide intimacy opportunities through retreats called vacation counseling. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, I was going to bring that up, and then we got talking on other things and I forgot.
Okay.
Would you mind explaining about that a little bit?
Yes. So I bring couples or individuals, whether to Southwest Florida, Costa Rica, or Jamaica, and we focus on all the forms of intimacy, the communication, the beauty, the aesthetic, the play intimacy. Yes. And we help people truly learn how to connect with themselves, with their higher power, and with their partner. That's my goal.
Isn't that wonderful? I think in order to really get it, you have to experience it. Because here we are, we're trying to talk about things and to explain things, but it's not quite the same as experiencing something. So that's very helpful. So how lovely that you've created an opportunity for people to experience what it should be like and what it could be like. And then you can decide, oh, that is so worth it. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Right. That's awesome. Well, Dr. April, thank you so much for visiting with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me on this show.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Janine Roth. She said, "Intimacy is not just something that happens between two people. It is a way of being alive at every moment. We are choosing either to reveal ourselves or to protect ourselves, to tell the truth or to hide, to dive into life or to avoid it. Intimacy is making the choice to be connected to, rather than isolated from, our deepest truth at that moment. Today, I invite you to choose intimacy as a way of being." See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Linda's Corner, please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. I also invite you to check out my nonprofit, Hope for Healing, at the website hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free ebooks, free audiobooks, and other free resources to help increase happiness, build confidence and self-esteem, strengthen relationships, manage stress, and calm feelings of depression and anxiety. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, or Amazon bestseller, You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.